Hello, I'm Christian, and welcome to the Jamoir Leadership Podcast, a show where we talk about effective collaboration, influence, and leadership in an increasingly complex world. My interview partner is Dr. Dirk Schlimm. Dirk is an international leadership expert and the author of Influencing Powerful People. The purpose of this podcast is to share ideas and stimulate discussion, and it does not constitute professional advice of any kind. If such advice is needed, the services of a competent professional should be sought. The speakers, host, and Jamoir International Incorporated are not to be held responsible for any use, misuse, or reuse of the content. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Jamoir Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm so glad you're joining us. What you're tuning into right now is part 2 of a 2-part discussion with Rory Cantwell, the CEO of SWEB Development. If you haven't caught part 1, I highly encourage that you check that out. We got introduced to who Rory is, his journey from the field of environmental science to how he built his career and is now CEO of SWEB. We also talked about leadership in renewable energy, challenges in project development, and mega project management. So if you didn't catch that, it's definitely a must listen. But join us now as we're diving into the topics of Atlantic Canada, integrating social values, navigating regulatory landscapes, so much more, including advice from Rory for early career and aspiring leaders. Let's dive in now as Dirk and Rory continue the discussion.
In the intro, loved your promo for Atlantic Canada and Halifax. So let's go there. Let's go there for a second. And to me, really, and I'm thinking of this in a Canadian context and in a Nova Scotia, and thanks for explaining the difference. What's the Maritimes and what's not the Maritimes? So that is important for us here to know also. But do you think there's a bigger role? Is this for Atlantic Canada, given geography? A lot of wind. Whenever I've been there, it's weather is a big factor. Are you in Halifax in a unique position to say, the region here, we can play a larger role in energy generation, like other parts of the world do in fossil fuel industries? But this is the time of Atlantic Canada because we're in the right location, in the right place. Is there bigger play here? Are you looking for global notoriety, let's say, in renewables for Halifax and the Maritimes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll preface this with I'm very biased because I'm from here, and I have spent time working all over North America. But I really think Atlantic Canada, the opportunity is huge. We're sort of in a perfect storm here in Atlantic Canada, whereby we have a world-class wind regime, as well as a carbon-dense grid, as well as aging generators that need to be replaced. And furthermore, we've got location, right? We neighbor the large and wealthy markets of Quebec and New England, and not to mention we're the closest continental landmass to even wealthier and populous. Those factors are important, and I get the energy transition is hot sort of worldwide, but I think those are reasons why Atlantic Canada is particularly noteworthy. And furthermore, the markets themselves, or the provinces, have released targets and goals to get to renewable energy. So I mentioned Nova Scotia off the top earlier about 80% renewable by 2030. So from a regulatory perspective, it's healthy. And furthermore, they've released some plans to bring on even more renewables over the next number of years. And New Brunswick has a very similar approach as well in terms of plans and renewable energy goals that would get them to a similar scale as Nova Scotia in the next 10 years or so. So there are those documents in place to encourage this activity. And then furthermore, you hear a lot about this new hydrogen and ammonia industry that could potentially happen in Atlantic Canada to serve that market. I guess domestically potentially, but also Europe's needs. So yeah, no shortage of opportunities in Atlantic Canada, I would say.
Excellent. You're a great ambassador for Halifax and Atlantic Canada, and the future is looks bright from what you're describing. That's fantastic. Hey, let me get to. I'm going to combine a couple of things here because you mentioned community earlier. We talked about government, so there's you mentioned regulation, permitting. I was involved in a building of a parking lot here where we live north of Toronto, and we needed 14 city departments to weigh in on the parking lot. And I said, wow, there's a lot of complexity for a parking lot. So I can only imagine what the regulatory complexity is for you. So if I ask about the community, government, regulation, how do you navigate all of that? I think you touched on it a little bit, but I think you must be a bit of a politician as well, and community activist as well, to get all of those stakeholders aligned to move forward with our big projects.
Well, I think there's certainly an element of that, but I mean, I certainly believe what I talk about, and I think I would start with community engagement is really essential. Yes, you need the technical components in place as well, but you really need to reach out and network with the community at the outset and really solicit feedback from what you're trying to implement. And you need to do that early. I know it's kind of cliche, like do it early and often, but there's a reason for that, right? And the reason is the later you wait to sort of introduce the feedback, the harder it is, right? Because you invest more, plans become more solid, and it's much more complicated to make changes. So you go out there early, you get feedback, you integrate it into the design. So when you get to those more costly investments, you've already sort of addressed the feedback from the area that would be impacted, and hopefully the plans prevail because of your comprehensive engagement to date. And I mean, we also have other mechanisms to engage the community. We try to set up these community liaison committees for when the project is sort of late stage development and into operation, to make sure that the project messaging is being disseminated properly, as well the community feedback is being shared with the project, and furthermore, a portion of the funds of the project would help fund initiatives that they would be willing to or interested in undertaking. And these initiatives usually are in line with our mission that I mentioned earlier towards fighting climate change and benefiting the community. So that's one way to help from the community perspective. But then with regard to the regulatory perspective and permitting and so forth, yeah, no doubt we have a lot of stakeholders to work with. I mean, some matters are municipally relevant, others are provincially relevant, others are federally relevant. And we have to make sure we have a very robust network with whom we can not only connect to understand we're addressing the concerns and the priorities of their respective departments, but also you want to be in a situation where you carry out the work as appropriate, and should something come up, you want to be able to have those conversations with the relevant group to see how you can address the concern. So you want to be talking about the interests of your projects and your company with the group and the community and all stakeholders sort of as early as possible, because I think when you're dealing with something like renewable energy and the sort of global benefit of it, you need to have that wide network and be able to reach out to people that you've built relationships with to make sure your project is sort of meeting the various requirements. So I would note, engage early and often, and make sure you have a sort of deep, comprehensive network of the key parties as you carry out your project.
Yeah, so Rory, thanks for that. And again, knowing the players and building relationships and meeting people, also not always when you want something, right? But build a relationship earlier, and I think that is important advice for really any business context, and it is. People matter, and I think you mentioned it earlier, right? People may have a very different perspective on your business than you do, and so you need to create that awareness and not saying, hey, I'm excited about this, and yeah, but somebody else may look at it differently, and it may take them some time, a bit of work to get as excited about it as you are. Hey,
exactly. And I would say that should something come up, like in your project development, like an urgent matter, you don't want to start looking at the contact directory of an organization, right? You want to have those contacts in place, because time is everything in those circumstances. So yeah, I totally agree. You want to build and cultivate your network. Yeah, as early as possible, and it's advice to no matter what you're sort of trying to accomplish in your career or life in general.
Right, yeah. So let me just touch a little bit on the international aspect. You mentioned that SWEB is a subsidiary of WEB Wind Energy in Austria, or as they would say, WEB Windenergie. So those are the head office in Austria, and so they have, and you and I, we met in the context of corporate governance. So that's why we're putting that question in here, because I know you are a graduate of the director's education program, and so they have, so that's a very European setup. They have executive management team and a supervisory board. Those are separate, but so. What are your thoughts on leadership in the context of executive management, in the context of board, of governance? How do you think about executive team dynamics, board dynamics, different, similar? Here's your opportunity to share about corporate governance with us.
Okay. Right. Well, great question. And Dirk, I mean, by the sounds of your voice, you may have some experience in the Central European market, so I'd be happy to hear any insight you may have as well. But I can certainly say it's an interesting dynamic, the two-tier board system versus the unitary board system. I think either way, you need to remember that you're a team, right? So boards will never know as much about the work as, say, the management and the people doing the work. I think the ratio they note is about 10 to 1 hours work. I mean, team management versus board oversight. On the other hand, the members of the board, they're in their positions because of a certain skill set and expertise and experience. So you need to be very respectful and appreciate what they bring to the table and their advice to sort of maximize the chances of success. But in terms of, how you'd see more of like the North American unitary board compared to the European two-tier board, I think, a pro of the two-tier board system is that you get very comprehensive analysis of issues, and you have, I guess, more time to reflect on those things. But I guess to the counterpoint of that is it can be slow and slower, and you have to think about efficiency too. Is that the most efficient way to make these big decisions? And I think it can be, whereas the unitary board would be a bit more streamlined from a decision-making perspective. But the downside is, are you sort of rushing there's less reflection? Are you rushing the decision that has to be made? Are you sort of putting more emphasis on the speed rather than the thoughtfulness? So it's a balance. I guess it sort of speaks to the sort of cultural differences too, I would say, between like North America and Europe. But that's what I've sort of observed in my experience working between the two markets. But I certainly appreciate that people can, or organizations can, do things differently, and it probably fits each culture respectively.
Excellent. Yeah. No. Thanks. Thanks for that perspective. Christian has been waiting patiently here, so we let you, Christian, jump in here, because Rory and I, we could talk about corporate governance for another 2 hours, but that's not what we're here for. So Christian, we let you jump in.
No, thank you so much, Dirk. I appreciate that, because my page is full of notes, and I think 2 more hours, my hands would be tired if I were keeping up with that. But that said, it's been a fascinating conversation, so much helpful detail. So Rory, I'll pause here to say thank you so much for that. And I think now, as we open it up, just listening to everything you've had to say and share so far, I think you'll be well suited to answer these questions that we always ask on behalf of people who are either early career or aspiring leaders. So I have 3 questions, and love to hear your thoughts in general here. So first of all, for those interested in a career in renewable energy, what skills and experiences would you recommend they focus on developing?
Yes. Well, I think I mentioned a bit earlier, but one of the benefits of the energy transition is the labor market impact. So to maximize the economic benefits, we need to train people to make sure we can have these jobs locally, and then we're not necessarily importing the labor that are there for the period of the limited period of time of the build, for example. So we want to do everything we can to train, to primary employment, which then benefits the tertiary, secondary, and tertiary employment opportunities to really grow that labor force. So, I mean, what I would say is learn a core skill well, ideally something that you enjoy, get your foot in the door, and learn everything you can about the company and the sector, and try to add value. And I mean, if you want to really excel, I think it's important that you got to get your job done, no question, but you also have to take that additional time really to understand the company and maybe how other people's jobs function, to really get a feel for how the business works, and potentially excel in the field. And I would say it would be important to get back to this sort of can-do attitude. So when you're starting out, trying to get your foot in the door, be humble. No job is really beneath you, right? You'll benefit from learning new skills. You'll meet new people. You'll build your work ethic, which will better position you for your next job. And I mean, from my perspective, and what sort of helped me was I would often say yes, and I would take on new things. And yes, it meant working more and longer hours, but I learned new things, and like I said, better positioned me for the next opportunities that arose.
Rory, that's very helpful, focusing on skills, remaining humble, and I think just having that broad base of knowledge in addition to that specific skill or interest that you might be developing, it really adds to that quest to be well-rounded and to look for those opportunities and to be ready to jump on them when they come your way. So maybe just taking that point, and then next step, say you're someone interested in a career in renewable energy, but now you're thinking, hey, I have that skill where I've focused, I've made those connections, and now I'm looking to truly become a leader in this sector. Would you say there's any further advice or any specific points that you'd say, hey, if you're looking to lead or develop your leadership in this industry you need to be aware of, or you need to focus, or really need to just bring into your skill sets? Anything more you could say on that?
Yes. So for me, one of my eureka moments in my leadership journey, which is by no means over, it's that I learned that leaders don't have to be at the top, right? It doesn't have to be your C-suite people. It doesn't have to be the chair of the board. They can be throughout the organization, right? And you really want to sort of cultivate that culture of leadership, essentially. So I think that's one thing you need to understand early, is that you can be, in a lower level of the organization, entry level even, and be a leader amongst the group, right? I think what's important to understand and think about is that, imagine you are a middle management person. You've got, your traditional leader, from a chain of command perspective of the people beneath you, yes, but you're also being a leader for those the group above you, right? And managing up, they talk about, and making sure your direct manager might understand the situation, and bringing them along with what you're trying to do, and being part of that greater team, and having that understanding of purpose and mindfulness to make sure people understand your situation. And then that can be from your direct manager to the C-suite to the board and shareholders. So first, overcoming that obstacle that leadership isn't always top down, right? You can have a culture of leaders. And then furthermore, I think it's invaluable to show up in any situation, any relationship, with sort of curiosity and empathy. So I would encourage that. And then furthermore, I get people are busy. They have busy lives. They have meetings sort of back to back to back to back. If you can, take a moment before your upcoming meeting, even if it's 2 minutes, and think about, okay, what are my objectives from this meeting? What do I think their objectives are from this meeting? And what would the next steps sort of look like? Just prime yourself with those thoughts before you go into your next meeting. And I find you'll be more present, and the outcomes of the meeting will likely be more effective. And then sort of lastly, what I would note is I'm a big Warren Buffett fan, and I was recently reading the highlights of the last Berkshire Hathaway AGM, and a similar question to this came up. Yeah, I think it was maybe more along the lines of, what advice would you have for someone earlier in their careers? And what he said was, write your obituary. So essentially, he can't give anyone like direct, you should do this, you should do that. Like, it's all very specific to your context, right? Where you came from, what you want to accomplish, what your competencies are, your experience, that sort of thing. But if you start with your end game, and from there you say, okay, in my succinct few paragraphs that are going to summarize my life at the end of it, what do I want the highlights to be? And then use that as the end game, and working backwards to think about how you can get to there is a great starting point.
Rory, those are excellent points all around, and I'll say I saw Dirk nodding along at various stages of your response, because those are themes that I think are really important to us on this podcast. I think recognizing leadership at all levels, and just thinking about those things, no matter where you are or want to be, super helpful. And I think that's a reminder that people need to think about when they're actually in those situations, whether you're way up there at the top, or you're just a first-time team lead or leading a project. Great advice. And I think just thinking about perhaps approaching your career with a mind for an end. Dirk, we've been talking a lot about authenticity and leadership recently. I think that ties in, Rory. If you're thinking about the end and perhaps what you want your legacy to be, you're going to be forced to be authentic about that, who you are and what you want to contribute and how you want to relate with people. It really hits on every aspect of what you do as an aspiring leader, early career leader, or leader to the very end. I think this advice certainly applies to those early career leaders, but I think everyone is learning something from what you had to say there. And just thinking about everyone right now, a little transition to my last question. We know that from Dirk and I's conversations with various people, and of course, just with us, we know that sustainability is so important for people across various industries. Speaking to my own experience in academics, being a very early career professor now, but also a junior member of a college's board, we're talking about sustainability. That's important to us, and people want to contribute to that and be hopefully authentic in that contribution and thinking holistically. But perhaps, Rory, you could just speak to thinking about leaders across various industries. What can they do to ensure that they're promoting sustainable practices that really matter or perhaps really have an effect in their organizations?
Right. Well, from what I see in the younger generation is that they're very open, very transparent. They're always looking for ways to be efficient with their time. And, they will sort of default to how-to articles online, which are all really great things. And certainly something you see I see in the younger generation. So if they couple that, what seems to be common practices with things that are a bit more formalized, like ESG, this environment and sustainable governance concept. If they dig into that, that can be very useful to an organization. And what ESG means is getting data, sharing the benchmarks, being transparent about the metrics and performance. So if you can sort of combine those things that they probably would inherently do with a more structured ESG approach, that will certainly help you, will not only add value to your organization, but will help becoming successful. And I think if you have sustainability at the forefront, which ESG often does, then you'll get what you measure, right? So that would be a pointer to people that are sort of up and coming and thinking about how they can really formally make sustainability happen in their organization.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rory. And what I appreciate about your answer is that's something people can actually follow up on, look up, and that's something we want to leave people with. I think all your answers at this stage, certainly with my questions, and I think to Dirk's, very practical with the application. So thank you for that. That's the end of my questions. Dirk, I'll hand it back to you if you have any final comment or question for Rory. Dirk?
The only final comment I have is it's fantastic to have Rory, a ambassador, as I said, for Halifax and Atlantic Canada and for renewable energy. It's been a true pleasure, Rory, to have you on the show today.
Yes, thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Christian. It's been my pleasure.
All right, and that is a wrap. Once again, a big thank you to Rory for joining us on the J'aime Leadership Podcast. We had a great discussion with him. We hope that you, of course, listeners, enjoyed, especially that last part got very, very practical. We really appreciate that. And we hope that you, listener, wherever you are, wherever stage of your career you're at, that you found something you might think about, apply, or at least share with people that you're in contact with. Once again, big thank you to Rory. If anyone has any questions, any comments, any feedback for us based on this episode or this discussion or any others, we'd love to hear from you, whether that's in our comment box on our YouTube page or, of course, in the email, which you can find in the description down below. We'd absolutely love to carry on these discussions with you. But that's it for today. Look forward to more future discussions coming soon. But until then, take care.